And you've just heard Landslide from Fergus McCreadie's new album, Forest Floor. And I'm delighted to be joined by Fergus now. Hello, Fergus.
Hello, Alistair. How you doing?
I'm very well, thanks. So what can you tell us about Forest Floor?
What can I tell you? So I wrote the music and the album kind of in lockdown. I think most musicians maybe can empathise with having a bit of a creative burst in lockdown because there was nothing else to do other than sort of practice and write. So I wrote all these tunes, and at the time I was staying at my parents' house rather than I just live alone in Glasgow. So rather than stew in my own flat, I thought it would be better to be with some people at least. So I went to my parents' house and did a lot of walking there. Sort of found all these like places that I used to walk when I was younger, and all these sort of forests and stuff. And I think that imagery, after I'd written the music, the imagery of that and attaching to the music to that really appealed to me. So that's kind of where the idea of Forest Floor came from.
Oh, that's a lovely thought. And there's often quite long pieces, and is that kind of reflective of your kind of state of mind, or even just going for these, long walks as well?
It could be actually, yes. I've never thought of it that way, but it could definitely be. I think I try not to think too much about length. I think if you there are definitely some tracks in the album that are shorter than others, but there are some tracks that felt right at 4 minutes and some that felt right at 10. So for me it was more of a musical thing, like when trying to make it so it didn't feel like I was rushing to any sort of conclusions, letting the piece play out kind of as it happened, so to speak.
Yeah, I guess what I was thinking about was I I think with your music as well, it's not about getting to the end of it. It's about enjoying it, as if that makes any sense. And I was trying to, I'm
Yeah.
probably overthinking this, but when you go for a walk, I think it's not about. Some people, it's like, well, let's get to the top of the mountain, and that's what they tend to do. Whereas some people, I was talking about this with someone recently, which is why it's in my head. It's about taking your time and getting there and looking and taking everything in as you get there.
Yeah. I mean, I'm actually very much. It's funny you say that. I'm very much, when I go hill walking, I'm very much like reach the top as fast as possible, then get down as fast as possible. But musically, I feel like I'm kind of the opposite. Maybe I get like one aspect out and the other aspect out in the other. But yeah, I like when I'm playing. I think sometimes on these gigs as well, these tunes can go on for a lot longer. But I like to just let it kind of develop. And you're right. I think it is as much about like everything that's in it rather than getting to like the point necessarily. I think the point is the journey that a kind of piece can go on for sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And are you managing to kind of tour or launch the album? Something.
Yeah, absolutely. So at the time we're talking, got an a gig at the Queen's Hall on the 8th of April, and then we're playing at Ronnie Scott's in London on the 19th of April, and then after that just a bunch more gigs. Actually, the touring's been good, and I feel like gigs feel like they're back like properly now, and there's no like fear that they're gonna get cancelled yet. Anyway.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, indeed.
And am I right in saying that your last album, Cairn, did it come out during lockdown?
Yeah, right in the middle of it. Yeah.
And was that frustrating? You've just said about how much you like playing live and going out.
I think at the time it wasn't, because everyone was in the same situation. I think looking back, it would have been nice to play it, but I think it just was what it was. Maybe that sounds a bit zen, but I think it was still nice in a way, because I think there were so many people staying at home with not as much to do. More people actually maybe checked it out than would have done. So in a way, it was good in some ways. But yeah, I definitely think getting back to playing live, that's going to be much nicer this coming months.
I think we all had to get a bit zen during lockdown. I think that was
That's true.
only ways of coping with it. So, how did you get into jazz? What was, what route did you take into the music itself?
I think it was kind of a bit of an accident, to be honest. I think there's always been like lots of, my mum is like the biggest music fan ever, and she was always listening to music in the house, and that did include jazz, I think. But when I started learning piano, I did it very much. I did the grades and I did the classical piano thing, and I just sort of like half-arsed it basically until randomly, I think I just had just one of those things that you do when you're like sort of in a summer between school terms or whatever. You go on these like random courses. So there was like a residential course you could go on for jazz, and I thought, oh, well, I'll just go on that and see how that was. And my parents were keen for me to do it too, and I went and did it, and it was completely life changing. Like as soon as I saw people playing jazz and saw how fun like just the fun of it, I think, which wasn't really conveyed to me in the classical sense, but how fun it is to play jazz and how free it is. That was kind of it almost. It was like a light bulb moment, I think, in a way.
I've spoken to a few people who have gone on similar courses, and I think people who are maybe not into playing music don't even know that these things exist, but they seem to be a really something that kind of you either love or you've got to embrace it. I think that whole thing.
Totally. It's such an intense, I mean, playing music in any genre is very intense, but I think jazz in particular, because you're improvising, it's like it's like way more personal in a way, because it's like your sound and your thing. So you do have to like, there's an element of throwing yourself into it. I mean, it's like every jazz musician says that they always remember their very first improvisation, and it's like the scariest thing you can possibly do. But the more you do, the more you get over it. So yeah, in jazz, there's definitely a sort of just like throw yourself into the deep end and then see what happens kind of attitude, for sure.
And that idea of it being such fun and enjoying it, I think more than any kind of other live music, particularly recently, particularly with kind of your generation of jazz musicians, when they're on stage, they are having the time of their life. And that reflects into the audience as well, you know. I mean, I've been to see one that sticks out was seeing Fatsuit play, and you know, just everyone's just reveling in their own musicianship, if for want of a better word.
Well, that makes it sound like like an egotistical thing, but I get it.
Well, I don't mean that. I really don't.
No,
mean
no, I know you don't. I know you don't. Yeah. But I absolutely get what you mean. It's very much like there is a very much reveling in the moment, because it can be so different every time. Almost kind of transform. Normally in music, when you make a mistake, there's sort of like oh God, you know. But in jazz, because it's all so much improvising is happening, it doesn't actually matter that much. So sometimes the mistake can be like the most entertaining moment of the tune. So that's kind of like, so much of the time I'll make a mistake and then look up and my bass player is just like laughing at me just because it is funny, you know what I mean? So yeah, definitely, there's definitely a sense of just like enjoying the moment so much, I think, as a jazz musician, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, and it does relate to the audience as well. I think you think, well, you know, we're having a great time, they're having a great time. That's kind of how this should work, you know, the kind of balance. Yeah. And I think as well, I'm not musical myself, but that idea of improvisation, I've spoken to a few people that say really, if they're out on a tour, it can be different, and it probably will be different every night because of that aspect of things.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, what we've been doing for like a couple of years now, actually, in the trio, who the band that make these records, we kind of go on stage and have no set list planned at all. That actually think makes it really nice. I think usually I sit and then just put my hands on the piano and play, and then eventually we do, because we know the common tunes, we do meet there eventually. But it's nice to like not have a plan, so like these tunes can like go anywhere, or they can go into like completely just like improvising a whole kind of piece in and of itself. And I think it's nice, like it's such to have that real open kind of feeling anyway.
So you spoke about going to the kind of residency and having that light bulb moment, and then, you know, the fear of doing your first improvisation. How did you get from there to, you know, having your own trio and, you know, releasing albums?
I suppose the short answer is a lot of practice, I think, to be honest. I think I was just super, I think I'm quite like, if I was to assess some qualities that I have, one of them would definitely be obsessive. I think if I start doing something, it's like hill walking. If I start doing it, I do it like all the time. Or piano, I start doing it, I do it all the time, so on or so on. And just when I was a teenager, that's all I wanted to do. I'd come home from school and never do my homework, but always practice, I think. And I think just doing that and then kind of coming to the RCS and meeting so many other really great musicians too, it's just kind of naturally led to this point. It doesn't feel like it's forced anything necessarily, but yeah, I think just practicing a lot and playing a lot, I think, with lots of other people. Glasgow is just such like the best city for so many other amazing musicians, as I'm sure you know.
And that course on the RSC, it really has been amazing, isn't it? To, I should say, for people not from Glasgow, the Royal Scottish Conservatoire, is that?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
So, and it's got this a jazz course. Well, you tell me about it, because you know you've been through it.
Oh, it's just great. I mean, like it's not even, the classes are good, but it's not even about the classes. It's like you're there and there's 23, 24, whatever, 25. I don't know how it kind of varies, but so however many other people there who also really like jazz, and then you end up kind of living at the building. I found I was just there all the time, but not just like playing. I would go there and just like hang out, and then go to like the sessions that were happening after, and it's like such a social thing, I think. And then I think spending so much time with other like really good musicians, you can't help but be like inspired by them too. So like when a really common question at gigs is like, oh, who inspires you, who are your heroes? And like obviously I have sort of older heroes, but then like friends and stuff, they're the people that have kind of influenced me the most, I think, in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, I think that Scottish jazz, and that's one of the big reasons for it, is absolutely thriving at the moment. And is that how you feel being in it as well?
Yeah, it feels really exciting, actually. All the gigs that I've done recently with Scottish jazz people have been packed, full of people, full of like young people who are really interested in like seeing the music and are interested in seeing improvising, I think. So yeah, I think it feels really vibrant and it feels interesting just now, for sure.
You spoke about influences on you, but your music's also got other influences aside from jazz. You know, there's kind of folk, and this is how I hear it anyway. What are you? Who or what are your non-jazz influences?
100%. I mean, again, it kind of comes down to the RCS, but when I was there were so many other like really good folk musicians there too, and I just listened to them all the time. So I think when I was younger, I mean, where I'm from, there's like a pipe band there, and my mum would listen to lots of like folk music too, and it kind of feels like it seeped into my brain without me really making it or even wanting it necessarily, but it's kind of that sound is there in my head. So but I absolutely love like all the folk musicians on the scene, and then bands like the Gloaming and Lau, and people like Liz Carroll and Martin Hayes and so on. They're just like not necessarily all Scottish people, but I just find folk music, again, it's that same thing. It's so fun and it's like so vibrant and good to watch, and it's just, yeah, it's the best. I really do. I love folk music.
Yeah, I mean, often some of the best musical nights are when you stumble in on a folk session somewhere, and folk are just, you know, again, often improvising or playing each other tunes that they don't all know, but they still find a way to play together. And it's just that joy of playing music with a group of other people.
Totally. It's an amazing thing, for sure.
And I mean, now that you've got the new album out and you're talking about the launch thing, can you look any further than that, or is Forest Floor the kind of focus at the moment?
I mean, Forest Floor is the focus at the moment, I suppose, playing live, the next kind of concerts or whatever. And then I think just on to the next album. I feel I've been doing a lot of writing recently. So it feels like a good time. Feels like a good time to like get another one out. So probably just start working on that, I think.
And you know, you've spoken about all the different influences and the different musicians that you know as well. Will there be more kind of collaboration?
I think for the moment, I love collaborating with people, and I play a lot in other people's groups too. But for the moment, I think there's the sort of thing that I have with the band that I'm playing with, David and Stephen. It feels quite, at least to me, it's like quite a special thing to play with them, I think, because we've played together so much. And I feel like there's a lot more to kind of be got from that in a way. So I kind of want to do like a few more trio things, I think. I have like loads of ideas for records in my head for like with people who would be really cool to play with. But for now, I want to focus on the trio for sure.
Excellent. Well, it's a great album, Fergus. Absolutely love it. So all the best with it and for the launch nights as well.
Thank you so much. What a pleasure. Thanks for having me on for a chat.
Oh, no problem at all. It was my pleasure. And this is Fergus McCreadie and Glade.